Okay, so you want to own FC Barcelona. Simple, right? It's the biggest brand in world football. 8 players from this one club just helped Spain win the World Cup. Its jersey is worn by more people on earth than almost any other piece of clothing that exists. Here's the first number that should stop you before you go any further. This club generated roughly $1.05 billion in revenue last season and also carries around 2.4 billion euros in total debt, the most valuable football brand on the planet and one of the most indebted sports organizations in the world at the exact same time. That gap between what this club looks like and what it actually is, that's the entire story. Understand that gap, and you understand Barcelona. Miss it, and you'll assume owning a club like this is a fantasy instead of what it really is, a financial tightrope walk in front of 100,000 people. Here's the part that breaks the entire premise of this video before we even start. You cannot buy FC Barcelona, not for any amount of money. Unlike Chelsea, unlike Newcastle, unlike Manchester City, Barcelona is owned by its members, over 150,000 socios who pay annual dues for the right to vote for a president every few years. No single owner, no sovereign wealth fund, no American private equity firm holds the club itself. The closest thing to an owner is a president elected by the fan base, currently Joan Laporta, who runs the club more like an elected official than a CEO. This is either the most romantic idea in world sports or the worst-run corporate governance model imaginable, depending on which season you ask. So if nobody can buy in for equity, where does over $1 billion in yearly revenue actually come from? 3 main pipes. Commercial deals and sponsorships bring in the largest share, around $564 million. Jersey sponsors, kit deals, partnerships, broadcasting rights add another $262 million. And matchday revenue, tickets, hospitality, contributes around $227 million, a number that's about to change dramatically, which we'll get to. There's a 4th pipe that doesn't show up as cleanly on a balance sheet: player trading, selling academy graduates, and develop talent for transfer fees. We'll come back to that one, because it might be the most important number in this entire video. Now here's where the story turns, because this is where Barcelona nearly collapsed under its own weight. By 2021, Barcelona's debt had ballooned to roughly 1.35 billion euros. So heavy, the club was forced to let Lionel Messi leave for free. One of the greatest players alive, given away because the books simply couldn't carry his contract anymore. To survive, the club's president stood in front of members and announced something that sounds almost absurd out loud. They were going to sell off pieces of their own future to pay for their present. This became known as the levers. In June 2022, Barcelona sold 10% of their La Liga television rights for over 200 million euros, followed weeks later by another 15% sale to the same investment firm, 6th Street, for over 400 million euros, locking the club into paying that firm tens of millions of euros every year for the next 25 years. Then they sold a stake in their own media production arm for another 100 million euros. 4 separate levers pulled in a matter of months, all to unlock enough cash to legally register new signings under league spending rules. Without those levers, Barcelona would have posted a loss of roughly 377 million euros that year instead of the profit they reported. They didn't get richer. They borrowed against their own future television income to look solvent enough to keep playing. Here's the twist that connects back to why you're watching this video in the first place. While the boardroom was selling off pieces of the future, one part of the club was quietly building it. La Masia, Barcelona's academy, is the same pipeline that produced Lamine Yamal, Pedri, Gavi, and the core of the squad that just helped Spain lift the World Cup. That academy isn't just a source of club pride, it's a financial lifeline. Every homegrown player who breaks into the first team is a player the club didn't have to buy on the transfer market, and every academy player eventually sold elsewhere becomes pure profit, since the cost of producing them was already absorbed years earlier as youth development spend. In an industry where wages already eat over half of total revenue, a self-sustaining academy is the only lever that doesn't come with a repayment bill attached 25 years later. So did it work? Cautiously, yes. Revenue climbed to 994 million euros for the 2024 to 25 season, up 30% from the year before, and debt has been reduced to around 469 million euros. Still enormous, but a fraction of where it stood at the depth of the crisis. The biggest reason: Camp Nou reopened in November 2025 after a 1.5 billion euro renovation, and once the stadium reaches its full 105,000 seat capacity next season, stadium revenue alone could approach 350 million euros a year. The club that nearly gave away its best player for free 4 years ago is now projecting to cross $1 billion in revenue for the first time in club history. So picture two versions of Barcelona's next decade. In the optimistic version, the finished stadium hits full capacity, sponsorship deals get renegotiated at premium rates now that the venue is world-class again, and La Masia keeps producing World Cup winning talent that either stays and wins trophies or gets sold for pure profit. Debt keeps shrinking, and Barcelona becomes the first club to genuinely balance being both the most valuable brand in football and a financially sustainable business. In the realistic version, wages creep back up as the club chases trophies again. One disappointing academy generation forces them back into the transfer market at full price, and the debt owed on those TV rights levers keeps draining tens of millions every single year for the next 2 decades, regardless of how the team performs. Same club, same stadium, same academy. The only difference is whether the next president manages the temptation to spend like the crisis never happened. So is owning, or in this case, running FC Barcelona, worth it? It hands you the biggest brand in world sport and a talent pipeline that just produced a chunk of a World Cup winning squad. But it demands whoever holds that presidency treats the club less like a football team and more like a highly leveraged media company that happens to play matches on Sundays. Every number in this video, the levers, the debt, the wage ratio, the stadium bet, exists for one reason. It filters the presidents who wanted to be remembered from the ones who actually understood what they were managing. Because the real business of running Barcelona was never about winning the next trophy. It's about surviving the gap between what the club is worth on paper and what it actually owes.